Trustee Fonstad.
Here.
Trustee Simchich. Trustee Sumner.
Here.
Trustee Toretto.
Here.
Trustee Kravitz. Trustee Ullman.
Here. President Fraser.
I'm sorry, President Frazier.
We have a quorum. Budget item 2, budget workshop. Village manager Monster.
Take this guy. And we have a guest from Whitefish Bay.
Yes, we have guests from Whitefish Bay High School.
Welcome.
From the Whitefish Bay High School government class?
Yes.
Yes. So if you have any questions, just let us know. We're going to report for this. But what we're doing now is this is our annual budget workshop meeting. So the village manager is going to describe for us his proposal for the village budget for 2019.
You might want to move over on this side to see what you present.
We're required by,
I'm not sure if you like, sure, but you can still read it.
we're required to pass a balanced budget. So if this doesn't balance at the end of the presentation, then he's going to have to sharpen his pencil. All right, Mr. Rogers.
And if you knew the village manager, he likes to make money. All right, before we start, just so you know, I want to go through real quickly a couple slides. And on the agenda tonight, you notice, I just want to explain this right now, there's 2 additional items, item 3 and 4, which Mr. Brandmeier will explain later. Those have been added primarily so we can get some activity done to beat the weather. Otherwise, we'd wait until November. But these kind of things we want to get done before the snow flies. And we talked to Mr. Larson, so we're going to take care of those, and Scott can explain that later. Anyway, this is the 2019 executive budget summary. As required by state law and by our code, I'm required to submit to you a proposed budget. I'm supposed to submit it to you by the end of October, so obviously we've met that deadline. The budget is, and if you ladies would like copies of this, like on a thumb drive or something, these
Copies up there as well.
You're the man. This is.
Are we the 2018 annual program?
This should be 19. I'm glad you catch stuff. I was in here Sunday doing this. We're actually doing the 19 budget. We could do 18 again, I guess. And it's really, in my mind, our most important document. You know, I know we're looking at comprehensive plan proposal, which I have on my desk, but the budget, and I'm absolutely totally biased, but the budget drives our ability to do lots of stuff. You make programmatic and policy choices by your expenditure of dollars, or by not spending dollars. And so I really believe the budget is the most important document you guys do on a yearly basis. This is what this is. As I said, it is our financial plan. In every governmental agency, I don't care if you're a school district, if you're the state, if you're a municipality, if you're an NGO, I don't care who you are, each of us has a unique set of challenges. Our challenges are different here in Fox Point, they are in Whitefish Bay and Menominee Falls. And it's our job to try to balance our assets, our resources, against the needs of our citizens and the community, which is what you all are elected to do. And we all kind of work together to try to meet those needs. As every year I'm supposed to do, Resolution 2008-32 is a guideline for the minimum fund balance for the general fund. We're required to keep 10% of general fund expenditures as fund balance in the general fund. That's the resolution. As you know, we've all worked very hard to maintain that. And in the proposal you have before you, there are general fund balance proceeds being directed in 2019 for stormwater and pool operations. Even with those funds being shifted in that direction, our estimated fund balance is projected to go to 37.33% of general fund expenditures. When I started, I think the number was 17 and some change. I think last year it was 30, 31. So we've actually, more than doubled our general fund balance from 15 to 19, which is pretty good. Bond rating, you guys know I always look at Eric when I say this, never trust Moody's. Our bond rating is AA1. Scott's never-ending effort to try to be a AAA. But we are AA1, which is the second highest we can be, and I firmly believe we're AA1 only because we're not that big of a community. But we do have solid financial policies. We practice strong financial management. And I think, frankly, this high rating is reflective of how we do business here financially, and it does have an impact on our lower interest rates. If we continue to expand and diversify our tax base, the Mandel project would be one. At the end, that's supposed to add, we don't know yet because it's not built out, $48, $49 million in new construction of tax base. That's going to make a significant difference, and that's the diversification of tax rate that people like Moody's like to see. Conversely, if it were to contract, and if you look at the Village of River Hills value, because you can go online to see it by community, River Hills is currently experiencing contraction in their value, and that's not a good thing, which means that their rate will increase to maintain the same level. If we were to lose some of the commercial base that we have, and we don't have a lot, and if we have singularity of tax base, if we were even more residential than we are, that would also not be a good thing. You want to have diversification in your tax base, which frankly is one of the things that we need to do, and is another thing I think candidly that the Dunwood Mandel project affords us. As you know, we have restrictions on revenue generation by the state levy cap, and so we are, it's going to be a challenge to maintain the AA1, as I say this every year. Dealing with the rating agencies, I do believe it's probably easier to fall down than go up. But as staff will tell you, Scott can only be slightly competitive with Moody's, and I would suggest that we're going to try to get to AAA anyway.
Just for the benefit of the students, the state law mandates that municipalities cannot raise taxes very much year to year. That's something that comes down from Madison. That's something we can't control. So when the village manager is talking about village levy tax, that's what he's referring to.
And when you folks are done, you ladies are done, if you have any questions, if you want to call tomorrow or the next day, you can call Michael. He's our assistant manager, myself, and we can help you with whatever. We will not write the paper for you. Maybe for a small fee, right, Mike? You can write the paper. Okay. All right, here we go. This is probably the most important slide. I got my kid right. Got to pay tuition. Here's our fund expenditures by fund from 17, 18 to 19. You say every year, right? This one. And I can read these to you, but you can see generally our general fund expenditures have increased from last year at 6.706 to 6.739 proposed in 19. The debt service, as I've said for a couple years, we've engaged in a lot of smoothing activities. We've done advanced refunding of debt. We called some debt. And even though we layer on about $1.5 million a year, by the way we had the deal structured and by the way we've taken advantage of our AA1 tax, AA1 bond rating in years past, you can see the debt service from 17 to 19, we've added about $3 million worth of debt because we've prepaid some of it and the rates are so good. Our levy's gone from 1.551 to 1.552. That's pretty cool. The capital expenditures have increased as we've continued our investment in things such as streets and water and stormwater. Obviously less so with sewer, but we've had greater needs in other areas. That's again reflecting the needs of the community and quite candidly our ability to sell debt at extremely low bond rates. We've taken advantage of that. Sewer, and this is my experience in almost every community, sewer generally remains pretty flat. I mean, I'd like to say that there's something dynamic about sewage service, but the basic infrastructure with sewage is basically it runs downhill, and there's a lot of concrete pipes, and so it requires a little less. Liz looked at me, come on. And so generally that stays pretty flat. Stormwater, I think you'll see an increased commitment to stormwater maintenance. Honestly, for a number of years, we've kind of done some smaller projects, and I think Scott would agree with me, but here in Fox Point, we put a lot of effort not only into handling the quantity of stormwater that we have, but also maintaining the quality of our stormwater. You know, we deal with TMDLs and DNR and MMSD. We work with all these agencies. And so when we have opportunities to do street work and water work, we're also going to take the opportunity in the same area, since we have, you know, the street cut open, to engage in some stormwater work as well. The water fund as well, you can see it's moved a little bit. It's less than 2017, a little bit more than 2018. Primarily, there's not much change operationally in the water system, but there is, again, some capital investment. The thing here that I remind you every single year that we have is that the expenditure restraint law, the expenditure restraint law, the state actually pays municipalities to keep their expenditures at or below a certain level. The problem is for a municipality like us that has a nice amount of cash in the bank and we could spend the money and not levy our citizens, if we do so in a way that the state doesn't agree with, they can take our expenditure restraint money away, they can keep it. For us, it's just under $100,000. So at some point, our community will have to make a decision as to whether or not it's worth it, because that number continues to get less and less. We've been in a strong enough financial position. We may just decide at some point not to do it, but it is almost $100,000, and if we can continue to try to make efforts to keep it, we will. On the general fund, we have tried to recognize, and we don't have many of these, but we do have some expenditures that we can recognize as non-general fund expenditures, which allows us to make that number look less than it might otherwise look. And it's just an accounting methodology more than anything else, because the DOR, you report your expenditures and your revenues on a single form, and depending on how you recognize expenditures and revenues, and Mary looks at me like I'm a mad scientist, it helps us maintain our expenditure restraint monies. But as I say every year, DOR is getting increasingly strident about this, and you know, at some point they could call us up and say, no, we disagree with you, we're keeping your money. The good news for us is we do sit on a substantial pile of cash, and we're absolutely prepared for it if they do it. They took Bayside's away a couple years ago. If you remember, Bayside lost their expenditure restraint money. They had to go through a re-benchmarking exercise. You know, I just kind of say this every year just so if it happens, you know, we're prepared for it. All right, I'm going to go through the general fund, the main categories of expenditures. You can read this for yourself. Basically, you know, the change we're looking at from 18 to 19 is about a 1.3% change in general government expenditures. Next. Public safety expenditures are increasing by about 0.5%, which is, they're pretty flat, and as I indicated, and you guys actually approved at the last meeting, we have settled on a 3-year collective bargaining agreement with our public works, or our police union. And so we are settled down through the end of 2021, which, as I mentioned in the memo, gives us a substantial amount of labor cost stability, not only for the police officers, but since we generally benchmark all the employees alike, which is, I guess, the practice I like to follow, that pretty much gives us overall labor cost stability for the village from 19, 20, and 21, so we can plan for what our labor costs will be. You know, you're going to have people coming and going, but as far as the base cost, it should give us some stability for that. So that is a nice thing, and frankly, gives us a leg up on a lot of our neighbors who, you know, we're still trying to get. Has anybody got 18 left, Chris? I think it's just 19. There's a lot of people arguing over 19, so I'm glad that we have a great relationship with our police officers and we got it all done. Public Works, you can read the numbers. That's about a 2.2% increase from last year to this year. And one more slide. Conclusion. Much like last year, it's largely a maintained operational budget with our levy cap in place. You know, candidly, we don't have a lot of ability to do this. We would have the ability if we decided we want to spend a whole bunch of our cash, and then of course we would lose expenditure restraint. So we just have to recognize expenditures differently. We do have a significant capital project, Calumet Road, Barnett Lane, and View Place, and I did ask Scott to put his annual memo together explaining that. He was kind enough to do that. That's in your packet. Labor costs over the last couple of years have been largely flat. I see that changing a little bit. There's increasing shortfalls, or what am I trying to say? There are more jobs out there than people right now in all sorts of businesses, and we are not immune to that, but we have fixed our costs. Commodity costs over the last few years have largely been flat, but I am starting to see a little bit of an uptick in that. We've talked about fuel prices. I think the oil is 70 some bucks a barrel now. That will impact our fuel costs. And so as we continue to grow our fund balances, we should blend cash and debt as rates slowly rise, and it's more of an art than a science, but in years past, if you remember 2 years ago, we sold debt at 1.26%. You know, in the ideal world, you would have sold a whole lot more debt at 1.26%, because that's almost like free money, but you have to, you know, be cautious, be conservative, sell only what you can do, because we don't want to get too far out in front of our skis. But as rates continue to creep up a little bit, there will be an increasing application of our cash balance, and perhaps a little bit less debt. We're going to have to see what happens to rates over the next couple of years. Finally, as you know, we're going to have some significant proposed capital expenditures. We have a pool, we have a library, we have different things going on. And so as we have these discussions, you know, they will be difficult discussions. I think the village is in a position that, as I said before, you can afford whatever you want to afford, which kind of sounds weird, but it's the fact. But the reality is, A, whether or not you should, and B, whether or not it's in the best long-term interest of the village, and that's why you guys you know, get to make those decisions. So that's it in a nutshell. What I'd like to do now is I'm going to sit down with the budget book, go through some of the key highlights. You can ask me any questions as I go through Eric sent me a couple things I want to correct, and then we can do what you wish.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
Alrighty. I will, can you hear me okay? I will start with Eric's notes, because he actually, I want to make sure that I deal with a couple things that Eric found. I will probably, there were some words that I did incomplete edits in the 18-19 thing. I'm going to focus primarily on the financial stuff, if that's okay. If you turn to the general fund, and this is tab 3, and it's the investment income line, which is page number 3 of the computer printout. Sorry, I was trying to find it there. You'll see the investment income listed at $80,000. As I've said in years past, that Mary, the fine young lady sitting in the back, is always telling me I'm too conservative with my investment income. Page 3. So keep going 2 more pages.
Numbers
There we go, right there. It says $80,000. Actually, we talked back and forth, and you know, the first part of this year we were making $12,000, $13,000 a month in investment income. And as you spend the cash balances down, I think last month it was like $9,000 a month. So admittedly, the $80,000 is still too low, but I frankly like to be conservative. I've said this every year. Be conservative with the investment income, but just think it's smarter to do. If it comes in above that, then the fine young lady, Wendy Unger, will stand here and say, you added the cash balance by X amount more. So that number, though, we didn't mean that to be $85,000. So that number, you can make a note, and we'll, in fact, Mary's already put the new number in the computer. We will send out a replacement page for you, so that'll be $85,000. So Eric found $5,000 today, which will go to the cash balance. Cash balance. Just to be clear, the pool subsidy in the memo says $141,686. That was prior to us identifying a last minute expense. The budget number of $166,468, that's the pool subsidy amount, is correct. One, if you compare the narrative to what's in the budget, the narrative is incorrect, the budget amount is actually correct.
So could you draw us to that?
Sure, absolutely. School budget is behind tab number 7.
Actually, the numbers there are correct. It's in the
Correct. The
information.
narrative is incorrect, so
Pages 7.
37.
And 11 of the info memo was listed a different number.
Yeah, so the 166 is correct. All right, and I'm just going to then start the general fund. If you want to go back to tab 3, where we just were. And if anybody has questions specifically as we go through, stop me, otherwise I'm just going to.
Have we made any change with regard to investment income? Have we made any investment vehicle changes? Are we going to?
You know, we've talked in years past about doing some stuff like the American Depository Management and those types of folks. We have not done that. We can and we should. We are giving up some basic points going with the LGIP. We just haven't done it yet, to be honest with you.
But that's something you entertain.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, our investments are restricted by state law.
Right. Oh, I understand.
So
This is a discussion we've had since 2010.
Yeah,
At least
it
on
is.
and off, right?
And I think we're going to have a discussion again in 2019, year to year, but it's for budget purposes. You just need to put in a number, anticipated income.
And
And then there are issues that we've gone back and forth about. Obviously, if you get a more return, you're taking on more risk. So it's really an issue, is the risk. Does the added risk justify or does the income justify the added risk?
Fair enough. On the revenue side, I'm just going to start on page 1 of the general fund. Everybody got it identified. Really not much of a change anywhere on that page. The state street aids are down about $11,000. That would probably be the most significant change on that page. Everything else is still pretty flat. You turn to the next page. Fines and forfeitures are up a little bit. That's somewhat of a, it's kind of a guess. It depends on how your business is, right? And we are not, and we continue to be more of a, we do tickets for speed. We're not like some of our neighbors who I think go out and try to write tickets. Is that a fair statement? I'll defer to the 2 police officers. I oftentimes see Bayside policemen sitting at River Hills trying to write tickets to me as I go home. But so that's a number that we just feel comfortable with as we kind of established a base there. And again, but it's kind of a guess.
Is there any uptick in municipal court activity as far as informing this number?
Chris, here's what, this is anecdotal.
Anecdote. That's okay.
Anecdotal.
Tell us an anecdote.
This is anecdotal from my conversations with Chief Reedy and with Ellen, who I think you all know Ellen, who's our court clerk, is that it appears as if the tone of the court may be slightly more, I don't say strident. What word would I use, Chris?
In general, we've had conversations, and I think that President Fraser is aware of the conversations. We've met with the judge to discuss the court operations. One of the things we've seen recently, and it's anecdotal again, is in general, people just aren't accepting responsibility for their actions, and they're not paying their tickets. So while we've seen changes in the outcomes of the people that either accept responsibility and pay their tickets, come to court and work with the judge and the prosecutor to make, we're seeing a large percentage of people that don't appear in court. They don't do anything. So then we've got to take additional legal action against them, either issue warrants, tax intercept, state debt collection, and things like that. So we're spending more of our staff time on the backside, doing follow-up with programs and procedures that are out there to try and get the fines and forfeitures number to kind of balance out. But we're really struggling with just people accepting responsibility and doing something with the citations that are issued.
And our tax forfeiture activity is up
Correct.
substantially from year to year, so Ellen's doing a really nice job with that.
Right.
But just anecdotally, I have been told that the judge's tone has been more firm. Yes, that's a good word. Okay. Is that fair? Now, the court still loses, to my knowledge, we are the only court in the North Shore that loses money. And I would like to not lose money, but it's kind of out of my control. So that's where that is.
Just a quick question.
Sure.
General, the Dunmore property,
Mhm.
assuming the majority was going to be completed in 2019, it'll be taxes, value, and then evaluation. I really realized that probably in 2020 budget, is that the case?
20, well, some now. Remember, it was zero because it was a school. So a little bit went on this year, a little bit more will on next year. As of January 1st, 2020, we'll establish the value for the board review and stuff that's in the summer of 2020. 2021 is really where it's going to hit the books.
That far?
Almost all full, yeah. Well, that's just how the calendar works. The Azora property, you know, if they can finish it next year, that would be at the same time frame. But January 1st of the year is where they set the value, and then you go through the administrative process
Yeah, January 1st
of every year.
20 or April, you know, that's like construction's largely completed.
Just assuming they keep, and they are ahead of schedule. So that's, yeah, I mean, that's the thing when you approve something like this, it takes a little bit of time to get on the books.
Okay, good, good enough, thank you.
All right, let's move the general government expenditures. We'll start on page 4. Not much exciting on the revenue side. Again, not much different here. We see our down to village attorney costs, which is $51,300 to 18. We continue to try to control those as best we can. We think that we can do with $5,000 less, and you can see our year-to-date expenditures. We appear to be okay. Village prosecutor expense are increasing a little bit. We seem to have more people going to trial for some of these cases. Chris, is that a fair statement? It seems like we've had more trials that are prosecuted.
Depending on the severity of the cases, we
Absolutely.
kind of fluctuates.
It just feels like we've had some people exercise their rights to that, which takes more time. For the prosecutors or costs go up for that.
Can we go back to the village attorney?
Sure.
So you budgeted 60,000
Instead of 65.
instead of 60,000?
Right.
Last year was 60.
Last year was 65.
This year,
What's that?
this year it's 65.
Correct.
This year it's right.
Yeah, next year I'm recommending 60. And again, like any
No
other.
chickens, that's why we've already approved the chickens.
The chickens are
As
also.
written out.
You know, the thing is about attorney, you never know. You do the best to control what you can. But, you know, since I've been here, Eric understands what I want and don't want, and you know, staff has reminded me, he used to come to department head meetings, and he used to come to everything. It's like, I don't need to pay for that. So,
It's a lot better than 17.
No kidding. Absolutely.
yeah, well, it was 100 and some and 15.
Yeah.
It was 6 figures, so we just continue to try to work it down.
Yeah, we had a history of being a big consumer of legal services, and that has decreased significantly in the last several years.
Yes. The other thing I want to point out, and there's not much in this one, you do have, as a board, $500 of training money there, which admittedly is not a lot. But if the board ever desires training of some sort, whatever we can categorize as training, I can break somebody in. Some of you want to go to you do a local government thing one time, you could do something like that again, I mean,
Does
just,
that include like the league annual meeting?
it could,
Yeah.
yeah, it could. I mean, you go to those things and they have, the workshops and they do different things, so I think that would be appropriate. But just, it's not a lot, but, and not everybody always wants to do it, but it is there. So, take advantage of it. All right, let's go to public safety, if you would, which is page 8. Just identify our dispatch contract, which is down about the middle of page 52100-217. It's up about just under $4,000, which isn't a bad increase, given our utilization of the formula that we have. Otherwise, this budget, and Chris has done a really nice job, this is a largely flat budget. We are going to have some recruitment expenses in there, and I know Chris and the officers, was that last weekend you did your thing?
Yeah.
You did they had a number of candidates in and put them through some psychological testing and whatever else they do, and try them out for the company softball team, whatever else you do over there. But, so sometimes you'll have some recruitment expenses generated in there if you have some people leave. I would not, I mean, you never know, but I guess I'm unaware of anybody that will be leaving this year, so, I would expect that would be about the same. If you turn to the next page, North Shore Fire Department, which is a significant expense, I would point that out. That is down about $6,600, give or take. Again, that's largely formula driven. There's a 5-year look back in that formula. And we've been fortunate enough not to have increasing activity, we've actually decreasing activity, which if you remember the resolution you passed last month, there are other communities on the North Shore that had to utilize the excess levy capability because their costs have increased. Not only, and so they end up, because their costs increase, they get a bigger portion of the pie since our portion is less.
Every year I'd like to thank former President West and former trustee F.R. David for their good work a number of years ago in spearheading our efforts to modify the formula, which we consider to be a bit unfair to the village, and we are seeing the benefit here.
And Mark Pollock as well. I think back in the day, had the fortitude to say maybe we can do this better, and took a lot of heat for the fire station being up on the corner of Bayside, which works well for us. All right, if we move to Public Works, which is on page 11. I guess nobody has questions, I can keep going. Again, largely unchanged. We're going to have streetlight budgets, bridge materials, all that stuff is largely flat. Materials will increase just a little bit due to some increasing commodity costs, primarily in lumber and steel and some of those capabilities, but it's only up about $4,000, and a lot of that is based upon what kind of demand we have in the marketplace. If we fix things, then we go do it, and if we don't, then we don't, and you can see year to date we've only spent $43,000, but that's what we've done. Our landfill fees, which are on page 12, increasing about $1,600. That's pursuant to the contract that we negotiated, if you remember. So that's the percentage of increase. I'm going to move back to page. I know health insurance is really sexy, but it's not really. Mary, at the end of the day, just because I don't remember right now, our health insurance increased by how much? One was up and one was down, correct? One was up just shy of 3%. I thought one was down a little bit.
One is down about 2%.
I mean, so we actually, what I'm trying to get at is our health insurance exposure for the community, for the village, for the employees, has been actually really good. Because depending on which plan you're on, we actually pay less, depending on the other plan, the cost, I think, is up just under 3%, which in the grand scheme of health insurance, that's good. That's pretty good. Yeah, I'll take that. So I don't know what you guys are seeing at your own places of employment, but that's pretty solid. If you turn to page 14, again, these are not necessarily the most significant numbers, because I want you to be aware of them because they're intergovernmental relationships. MADAC, you see, is up slightly. We have had an increasing amount of activity at MADAC, primarily with cats for some reason. Can't tell you why. And it's not like we have a zillion cats over there. We just had more cats than we've had in years past, according to MADAC. So, if you see a cat, take it home, I guess. It don't cost me money, take it home. On the health department thing, the line underneath it, we did redo the health department formula. One of the things that we learned as we got into it was, and Mike was involved in this as well, is that for a number of years, and I'll say this on live TV, we were underpaying the health department for the services. We were actually one of the big winners, maybe the biggest winner. Is that a fair statement? And so as we redid it and recalibrated that, there would be a 5-year adjustment made to this, and so you'll see this increase by about the same amount every single year. So this is like $3,500 a year. It'll creep up over the next 5 years to get us to where we should be, because we were winning big on that one for a lot of years. And they're still talking about whether or not to relocate the health department. We'll stay in Browndeer, we'll stay in Shorewood, we'll stay in both places. For those two communities, it appears to be more important that it be located in their community. For us and for Bayside and Whitefish Bay, frankly, we don't really care that much, and we don't have a place for them to be anyway, to be honest with you. So that's kind of how that is. If you turn to page 15, top of the page, contract services, that's for the library, and gone up slightly from 238 to 242. And if you turn to the page 16, we have kept the forestry consultant at a $40,000 level. When it came, it was at 35. Frankly, on my 2 cents, but John does a bang-up job for us. He's always very, very available. Like, the citizens love him, to be honest with you. He seems to have a good relationship with the people in the community, and so I think that's a positive thing. If you wish, let's turn to the tab behind tab 4. I'll show it to you, even though we don't have any authority. That's the library budget. We are the fiscal agent for the library. We're compensated about $14,000 for that, pursuant to the 3-year agreement that Christine actually negotiated. She was on there, and we maintained the same max level of compensation. It doesn't cover all of our costs, but it's a heck of a lot better than the 0 we were getting before. And it covers mainly Mary's time and some of our expenses to act as fiscal agent.
Where is it?
What's that?
Where is it? How much is it?
They pay us 14. They pay. Oh, it's in the general fund. The revenue.
The revenue, yeah.
That's in. Yeah, that's up in front in the general fund.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, they pay us $14,000 a year to be the fiscal agent. As far as the rest of the library budget, we do not pass it. It's passed by the library board, but it's included as reference. If you understand. All right, tab behind tab 5 is the sewer fund. Again, largely unchanged. You will notice on the bottom of the page the fund balance applied. I am recommending that instead of borrowing any money at all from the sewer, they sit on a substantial pile of cash as well. They apply $72,000 of their own cash to the sewer capital projects for this year, so they will not be borrowing any money. Just think that's the prudent way to go on that one. The rest of it, I can't really say there's anything different about the sewer at all. MMSD's rate increase, which is like 11% last year, this year is slightly over 1%, so it's largely flat. If you want to turn to the tab behind tab 6, this is our recycling fund. Our recycling fee, it appears as if we over budgeted slightly last year on the recycling fee. We adopted 205. It appears to be a little high from where we're going to be and where we were in 16 and 17. So we kind of settled back around 195.8 to see if this is a little bit better of a number. And the recycling fee is sitting on a small fund balance of their own. And so we've applied $21,493 of their fund balance to have that break even. Because otherwise recycling comes close, but it's not one that has a large revenue stream.
What are the, like, fees and penalties?
Recycling too late.
Yeah, I can't even, Mary, how do you apply late fees on recycling? Is that just their portion?
It's built into the formula, but it's basically, they just pay a bill late.
So you don't pay your
It's
water, sewer?
1.5% per month.
Okay. So that's their cut of the late fee?
Okay.
Okay.
Because that's combined billing, you know.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, municipal pool, which is behind tab 7. It continued, and Mike gave you the report last month, so I won't regurgitate that. A lot of these numbers are in there. And as I said at the outset, the general fund balance applied at 166,468 allows it to break even. And so that's where that goes.
And I just, I don't know what value this is, but the pool's open about 80 days a year, so it loses about $2,000 a day. Basically, that's what it's at.
Yeah, it does.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, it's just, that's what it is.
Yeah, we have done, you know, and I know when I play Rain Man on the whiteboard, we've done all sorts of mathematical exercises that will make your head explode. But yeah, that's how we're doing. I want to turn about tab behind tab 8, inspection services. Under building permits, 44460, you can see we raised that number from a budgeted $95,000 to $200,000, which might still be low, but we have some Mandel stuff going on, and we still have Azura going on. The biggest thing with the inspection services, there's probably two things, and one is Eric asked me about it, and I want to make sure I mention it. And the second is on the revenue side, and that is that the fund balance, Mary gave me a fund balance report, not for the end of September, but for the end of August. And the inspections fund had just shy of $500,000 in it. Largely, one of the Mandel permits was like $250,000 by itself, plus all the other positive cash flows we had. There's no need for $500,000 in the inspections fund, given some of the changes we've had in personnel and some of the changes in how we do this. The inspection fund largely cash flows itself with a small margin, which is exactly what you want. So one of the things that you will be getting either in March and December in my conversation with Wendy Unger is, what are the village choices for that $500,000? If you leave it in there, it's just going to sit there. You're not going to do anything with it. And so what I'll be asking the village board to do is to dedicate, and I still think you should leave $25,000 there, because next year you're still going to spin off, I think 75 is too low, but $75,000 to $100,000 out of that. To designate about $475,000 of that balance as unrestricted and move to general fund. A, because it's there for you to use. B, I'll be honest with you, it looks good for Moody's. We drive that fund balance up, it just increases our chance for AA. But there's no real reason, you know I want that. Gonna get it someday. But there's really no reason to leave $500,000 in the inspection fund. And if you want to use it for a pool, if you want to use it for a library, if you want to use it for whatever, it's there for you to use. You have to unrestrict it anyway, so you might as well just unrestrict it and make it look good for Moody's as of 12/31/2018. And Wendy said, that's actually brilliant. And I said, okay, she likes me. So that'll be coming up.
Should get her to writing.
She puts it up. She's an auditor. She puts stuff in there, right?
Big driver, of course, is done in
Yeah.
sewer, but just judging from the agenda of the building board, there's a lot of remodeling And some new construction, you know, principally tear down and rebuild kind of stuff going on. So that's good.
And the tear down rebuilds are not small.
No,
There's some meaty ones out there.
there's some new ones.
Yes, there are. And so, you know, it's just an opportunity. Again, we talk about cash management, we talk about utilization of our assets, how to leverage them. This is a classic example. So you will be getting, and I asked Wendy if she had a resolution. She goes, well, most communities aren't in this position. So I get to write my own, I guess. That'll be coming to you in November or December. And you don't really have to do anything. You just have to say they are undesignated. Mary does a magic transfer, and we're good to go.
So are most communities not in that situation because they do it to districts?
No, I don't think it has anything to do with tax increment. I think it just has to do with,
Development, you know, our neighboring communities.
we have been really effective at watching our expenses. And I think we have been very conservative at estimating, don't be laughing at me there. We have been also conservative at estimating our revenues. And I think sometimes communities get in trouble by assuming too much revenue so they can show expenditures. And then if the revenue doesn't come, they dig deep into cash. As you've heard me, I try to be realistic, but I'd rather be conservative than not. And that gives you choices. You know, it's kind of like keep your powder dry. You know, you never know when you're gonna, stuff. There's always something that happens at some point, and I'd rather have the cash and the ability to do something about it. So, in a nutshell, that's just how we approach it. Stormwater utility fund is on page behind tab number 9. The biggest issue in the stormwater utility fund, and we actually talked about this last year, Scott Grandmar and I talked about it last year, is we haven't had a rate increase in this thing. We've had one rate increase since it was started. And simple inflation will tell you that's not good. And we talked about doing it when John Mayer did our simplified rate case. Remember when John Mayer did that? That was a couple of years ago. And we were waiting for our friendly TMDL people to get their act together and give us our stormwater quality information. And at some point I looked at Scott and I said, we got to quit waiting. We have to take care of our financial position. So included in your packet, I had Baker Tilly do a quick analysis, and they recommended an 11% increase, which sounds like a ton, and percentage-wise it is. But when you think about 11% plus the 3% that we did, that's 14% since we did set up the utility, it ends up being a little more than I think 1% a year. I did put in there the ERU cost for the citizens. You can see the cost is $3.50 to $5, depending where you are. And those that are the big commercial properties, they're just kind of handled differently. If you look at like River Point, all the asphalt, they kind of have their own separate rate category. But if this is something you're okay with, then you will have to pass a resolution. So stating, I did check. Remember we talked about who has the authority to increase stormwater rates?
Right. Who?
You, not me. One member, Mike West, thought the manager had the authority. Yeah, no, it's by you have to do it by resolution. The ordinance says it has to be done by resolution, which makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. So if it's something you want, you'll get a resolution probably in December, since you'll pass the budget in the end of November. But that's the whole concept. And we've spent a lot of time looking at stormwater projects. Again, water quality, quantity and quality is really, really important in Foxborough. And if we're going to have a stormwater utility, and these projects are sometimes not cheap, we're going to have to at least try to sustain some sort of a revenue stream there. And it's not a lot, and you will see in the stormwater budget. If you look at the bottom of page 51, and I mentioned this in the slides, capital contribution from the village. And then right above it, you see proceeds from borrowing, $208,000, $208,230. This falls under the category of more than art than a science. And that is that I'm okay with the stormwater starting to have some debt service obligations. At the same time, I want to be sensitive to, this is our smallest utility fund, and it's our youngest. And I kind of want to keep that debt service to stormwater level. I don't want to start spiking this thing out and having to smooth it. If you remember original debt service levy, when I came, we did a lot of smoothing. We have the cash, and so I'm recommending that we apply $329,000 for cash to the stormwater, let it borrow 208, which is almost flat from last year. In fact, it is identical to last year. And just allow this utility to organically grow at an appropriate pace and not have to like bite off big chunks of debt service and build up some cash and give us a choice in the future again if we want to do cash or want to do debt within the fund. That makes sense?
Yep.
So that, I wanted to point that out. If you turn to the tab behind tab number 10, this is our debt service fund. This is pretty fixed. It's just we levy and we largely levy for what we need to have. We do have some transfers in there. $16,000 gets transferred from the pool. $13,000 gets transferred from the library fund. But our levy is darn near flat, which is good given how we've done our smoothing exercise. Turn to tab 11. This is the capital projects fund. This is probably always given the fact that we seem to do the same thing every year operationally, this is probably the easiest one. If you want to turn to, let's get into the stuff, page 68. And this is where if you have any questions, these fine folks back here can answer any questions that you want. We have, if you go down to 911-00879, I'm going to get off the big ones, the assessment of the HVAC system. I'll be honest, Bill has had this in his capital request since I walked in the door. And every single year I've cut it out. Haven't I?
Oh, yes.
Yes, I have. Because I'll be honest with you, there was a part of me that toyed, and this is when this room had that incredibly gorgeous mauve chair rail. It was promised us in 84 or something. My wife had mauve. Anyway, that's all right. And I had this fantasy that maybe someday we wouldn't be here. Because I had that fantasy we wouldn't be here, but you know, we improved this building. This building, in some ways it works for us, and maybe we'll not be here. Maybe at some point in the future we'll say, maybe we'll do a space needs assessment. But right now, I think this is a pretty economical, effective way to do it. Now, Chris is looking at me. Every time I see Chris, I say, why the heck did we build one building 10 years ago, right? You've heard this about 1,000 times. I cannot answer that question. That was a missed opportunity. Just going to tell you. It wasn't the choice either. I get it. But our HVAC system here is ancient, and is it 6, 7, or 8 different zone systems that Bill has?
Easy, yes.
It's just, you get the scores right here.
Oh,
Okay.
You'll be here a while, right?
No, we're gonna wrap up. And so we have those.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. And we have parts of our system that are really not in good shape, and it's really inefficient to run, and I think it costs us more money than it should. And so I'm not 100% convinced that this $25,000 number is actually what it's going to cost, but it's really hard to get somebody to give you a price on an assessment of your HVAC system until they get up there and open it all up and take a look at it. And so we are really just, this is the first step to get some sort of idea of what we really have going on. If you notice, was it 2 months ago when it was really hot and humid? We don't really have air conditioning here. You know that's why we just have like a chiller system. So it can be, 40, 50 degrees outside and still be really hot. And we don't take any humidity out of this building at all. We got to click over on certain days. I know you know it, but Bill showed me some of it. It's beyond bizarre.
It's really a science that he has going on, because the boilers don't get turned on at a certain time of year, and he refuses to turn them on in September. And there are occasionally times when the temperature drops, and he sits back and says, okay, we've got some rooftop units that will operate, but the boilers aren't going to, and there's certain segments of upstairs that aren't controlled by the rooftop units. And so as a result, you end up a little chiller on one side of the building than you do on the other. And then on the east side of the building as well as the south, you'll get the midday heating, early morning and midday heating, and it'll roast those people up. The sensors are located in some of those areas, so if they're really warm, the heat never kicks in to other segments. And so then those folks are roasting, other folks are freezing because it will never kick in and heat those areas, the other areas.
And we'll have, one of the systems will be chugging along, burning up electricity, chugging along, kind of fighting against the other side of the building. It's just, I mean, I really think it's really inefficient, and it needs to be looked at, because if it was improved and put in the right way, I think over the long term, we'd actually save money, because we wouldn't be fighting ourselves. But anyway, that's what that assessment is, and if in fact they come up with some sort of recommendation, I would expect in 2020 we would come back and say, okay, this is what we have to do. But we have to have somebody smarter than us take a look at it, because we're just not the people who look at it. Also the front and rear lights, which I have also cut out of the budget for like 4 consecutive years. You know, just being nice to Bill, I guess. The lights in the back that go over the garage doors, you guys, you know, when you did your article, you saw those lights. Some work, some don't. We need to have those fixed, you know, for safety reasons, if nothing else. And then the lights that are in front of the building, those wooden ones, that some are leading and some are not, that, you know, you go up by the sidewalk. Those can be replaced relatively inexpensively, and so as part of the same project, we want to get those done. Because again, if this is someplace we're going to stay, we should, you know, maybe like this room do a little something. Yeah, do a little something. The service doors, which is the $16,000, are the service doors in the back, the public works doors, the garage doors that go up and down. The ones we have are still really, really old, and they're largely not insulated. I don't know if they're not insulated, but if there is insulation in there, it's probably like crumpled up newspapers or something. And again, we want to invest in this to try to reduce our heating and, you know, they have cooling costs down there, but our heating costs are more than anything else. So that's what that is. On the squad cars, which is the one right below it, and we actually had a brief discussion, because Chris was giving us a brief discussion with Bill's president. We had the opportunity perhaps to buy this year gasoline-powered Explorers, which is what we currently drive. Ford is moving to hybrids next year, which is nice, but always a little scary when you put a new type of vehicle into the police service, because it's a heavy-duty service. They cost about $8,000 more per unit. But if you take Ford's estimated mileage, the break even for us, because I'm always about the break even, right, is about 3.5 years. Chris's general MO, and if you have any more questions about it, he's certainly here to answer, is to roll these new vehicles in, I guess, as administrative use first, and put all the miles in the last ones before we get rid of them as much as you can. And so the idea is that this hybrid vehicle could be on, could be on the force for, 4, maybe 5 years. But we thought, given the break even was 3+ years, that we would not buy the gasoline one this year, and we do the hybrid one. But that's what they're all pretty much going to be from now on.
Yeah, I don't want to step on what Scott was saying, but Ford has retooled the vehicle as of 2020. They will still, the base model will be this hybrid gasoline engine. However, they will still, if we wanted to step back and go with a straight gasoline like we have now, we're looking at about a $5,000 increase. So either way, we are seeing an increase from Ford across the board. So what we're talking about is that $3,000 difference, and that's where we've kind of been looking at this as how accurate are Ford's numbers. I mean, it's sort of a guesstimate. They probably have 10 prototype vehicles out there that they're using, but they're basically telling us that because it's a hybrid, we won't be expending fuel when the car is idling or starting and stopping. Which right now, looking at our fuel numbers, we're averaging somewhere around $1,900 a month on fuel. So that's where we expect to see that $3,000 gap savings turn quickly, but as Scott said, it's a first-year technology for us. I mean, they've been doing hybrids on these vehicles for years, but not a fleet type of a vehicle, so.
That number would have to get a little above 1,600 a month for us to break even on that, which I think is doable. If you think about our police service, a lot of it is stop and start. You know, just sitting by the school zone and schools letting, I mean, there's a lot of time where the engine wouldn't necessarily be running. But it is, I don't say scary, it's always, you know, because the demand on a police vehicle is a lot of heavy electrical use. As you know, the radios and all the crud, there's a lot of power pulled in those things. So, you know, we've talked about, you know, oh, Chris, how long do you think this battery is really going to last? You know, nobody really knows yet because it's not in service. But and the guys at Ford, we have spoken with them. Are you going to be able to service a hybrid? Right? Because it's not like you go up to Beansville and get an oil change, right? It's a hybrid. I mean, Ford says they will. They have other hybrid experience, but not necessarily with the police model. So, but we're not alone. I mean, there's a lot of forces going this direction. I think it'll work out. But just be aware that's kind of the decision that we made.
So that like 3.5-year cost savings, is that based on the $3,000 difference, or is that based on like the $8,000?
That's based more on the $8,000 difference instead of going ahead and buying the gas model in the future for $5,000 more. That's the difference between what we could buy this year and what we would pay next year. So actually, if we take that $3,000 numbers, our ROI becomes even more better.
Yeah.
So, the computer system, Chris, you have a number of computers and servers that are due to be replaced, and that's what largely that number is. Small equipment, dispatch is our capital dispatch number that we have to pay every year. We did that. Moving on now to Scott's Public Works thing on page 69.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming. We're just getting to the good stuff.
Oh, we're sorry.
That's okay. Hey, if you need something though, just be sure to, that guy right there can help you out.
Thank you
Good luck.
so much.
Good. Small backhoe loader in the Public Works Department. And then another loader attachment. One is articulating, the small one is not. Is that correct? Pay attention. The biggest thing in capital, you'll see at 91500-801 is street resurfacing. Scott explained this in his memo, and I think at some point, if you want to, and I think his memo was very complete. He did a really nice job. But I think the Calumet project is a significant project. If you pay attention to the PACER analysis that Scott presented, I think in March, did you hear? March, springtime. It is one of the worst streets we have in the village. If you drive on Calumet, you almost need to four-wheel it. The pipes in there, and Mr. Fraser guessed correctly how old the water mains in there, they're from the 30s. And if we're going to do it, we're going to do it all at one time. So this will be Calumet from lake to port. And that's 850 is a big part of the street resurfacing for that. The water fund obviously will pay for the capital cost of the water. And then stormwater, again, partly borrowed, partly general fund contribution. Onto the trees. It's only Lorax, it's the trees. Never see Lorax. I'll stop. Had kids, we want.
Stop.
Okay, I can't stop. Yeah, thanks, Liz. We included the tree inventory, which is a once every 5-year thing. And especially as the village is moving toward, its policy on private trees as well as our own trees. I know that we're not going to really, as John explained it to me, we're not really inventorying every single tree in the village. But there's certainly some value to understanding our canopy and our coverage and what we could potentially, as John explained to me, what our potential losses could be on private property as well as public property, and they're significant. So this is I think we do this every 5 years, is that what you told me? Right. So we have not done this since I got here, but I think the year before I came, you guys did it, so we're going to do it again.
And I think we've done a really good job as a village to sort of lead the way on addressing Emerald Ash Borer. Now as the private properties are coming to grips with it, I think they do look to what the village is doing as far as replanting and what kinds of trees, and that working with forester, he gets lots of questions about what you plant. So, we have an opportunity to sort of ensure that we have a diverse tree population, which serves well.
Very true. We do have in there, and I think it's year 7 of the acre plan. I mean, 7 now, Scott, $154,000 for the tree replacement.
If
I think
I'm
this is-
understanding correctly, next year is year 7.
Next year, yeah, that's what I mean, 19 is year 7
Yeah,
of the 8-year plan.
yeah.
And then-
I looked at that earlier today, and one of those of the trustees who weren't on the board back in 8 years ago, the board committed to spend $1.25 million over 8 years to address Emerald Ash Borer on just the public trees. So that was a big step, and it's I think we're much better shape than we would have been.
And I think we're in better shape than some of our neighbors. Right? We've been very aggressive on it. So that'll be in there. You see the $60,000, 916-00856. If you ever go back to the DPW yard during a rain event, it's you kind of need to bridge over the River Kwai to get through parts of it back there. It doesn't drain at all. It's a swamp and the water stands there. I can't even tell you, is there even drainage back there, Scott? Or is it just old compressed pipe, right?
There's
Both?
stuff back there, yeah.
Okay. I mean,
This is something that was, I think Scott was pushing for last year, at least last year.
I don't think it made it to SCAR the last couple of years.
Yeah.
The evil manager kept taking it out, but
And this is really this is to touch on the design and figure out what we need to do. Right now, the cost, because for those who were on the board when we did the DPW yard back in 2009, we had it set up in 2 different ways. Do the north half and the south half. And the north half was critical to get done because that's where most of the equipment is. We poured concrete all the way down along the east property line. But the south half was never done, so we want to resurrect that, and that's part of this cost too. What do we do?
yeah, and one of the things that is not in here, we have, at some point, we probably need to do it is, we will have to expand the public workspace that we have. Because if you ever watch, if you want, not entertainment, if you want to watch something creative, show up at about 3 o'clock and watch our guys park the equipment in the garages. I mean, it's a skill set because there's not a lot of room down there. And it was designed for another era, like you did your report. And at some point we've talked about what happens if we double the length of the bays. We've talked about all sorts of different things. It would be not that it's important for this year, but again, put in the back of your head that there may be something that'll need to come up at some point. We'll cross that bridge later.
So this $60,000 is just for the design, it's not for the actual implementation?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Do I think it'll take 60 grand?
No.
But if we don't, then we don't spend it.
Mm-hmm.
North Shore Fire Department capital expense. Those numbers are slightly down for us again, based upon the formula. We are having a discussion next month with the fire chief about the timing of those expenditures. They have the 3-year, if you were familiar with the fire fund, they passed a resolution, and I think it will be on your board agenda in November, but they have a looking ahead 3-year funding thing, so there's a 19, 20, and 21 capital plan for the fire department. And prior to my coming, they always let the communities know, and then they have to approve the resolution, and they can plan for it. My question for the fire chief, and then they kind of bill whatever they want to bill, and they want to bill us like, obviously, right away in a year. So Scott's obvious question is, what? You don't need the money right away. Why would I give you money right away in a year? You don't need it. I'll keep it and get interest on it. And so we're going to talk about when their cash flow really is necessary. So we'll see what happens. And it's not really so much an issue for us because we can cash flow it. But if you're a bigger community, say you're Glendale, and you're one of the biggest, I think they are the biggest in the North Shore Fire Department, and you have to come up with big capital expense, you have to come up with it by April 1st, and you don't necessarily have the cash, and you have to bond for it, you really have to, you could really have to move to get a bond issue done between December when you pass your budget to have proceeds to write a check April 1st. Can it be done? Probably, but you really that's tough. So the whole timing, the whole idea of cash flow, I think when they put this together was never really thoroughly thought through. Again, for us, it's not really that big of a deal because we have the cash and our expenditures, in the 40 grand category, 49, and we can always, we have those unencumbered funds, we can do it and then pay ourselves back. But I just throw it out for you. And then the last thing we have on here, last in your score sheet, number 1 in your heart, is the library, which is in here, and that's $79,787. That's, and Susan was here last month to make that presentation. I know, that's what I said. And so she made that presentation. I don't think you probably have any more questions since it hasn't changed since last month, but I just want to point that out that that's what that is. And that's, the last one is the water utility. I guess I won't skip that. Again, largely the same. We will have additional revenues generated by people living in the Mandel project as they come on board. Consumption overall is down slightly just because people are consuming less water, there's more efficient appliances and that sort of stuff. It's not like it's falling off a cliff. I think it's just down a little bit, and with the addition of units, it'll be back up a little bit. So, again, the biggest expense in the water utility is that water line on Calumet and Barnett and View Place. And but the water fund, if you see, I want to point this out to you, make sure you see it. I got to find it because these are the PSC accounts. And they are in a different order. And one number I want to show you.
So is that the capital outlay for the Calumet?
Here we go, page 71, if you don't mind. The water fund will be sitting on just shy of $2 million at the end of this year. And God bless the water fund, but it doesn't need like $2 million. So, 50-49300 fund balance applied. I'm recommending that $800,000 go toward the capital, primarily for the Calumet and Barnett stuff. And that'll leave the fund balance in there. My calculations said $1 million. I'll tell you, it's probably going to be more than $1 million left over after this. I just think, again, that's another good utilization of cash that's we built up, and then we don't have to borrow and incur the debt service over 10 years.
Scott, I did have another question on page 75.
Okay.
If you look at the taxes line, it's 408. And it's probably a typo. It shows no, we didn't budget anything.
Yeah, that was something we just upped like this year. We have it every year. It's an interfund transfer.
But so, was it zero in?
No, if you look at the front, the revenue would be 170. I think it's 170 in the general fund. Behind tab, it ties to what's on tab 3. On the very first page, 165. 41200, this is our second revenue line, is that That's the interfund transfer, so that's the offsetting revenue, and it pays the general fund. So that was just an omission that we made.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Any other questions? Thank you.
And then in your package is the agenda for the last two items.
Yes, we're not quite done.
You want to forget? And Scott, if you want to come up and explain these two votes?
Yeah, we're going to move to agenda item 3, which is the grading and excavating proposal that is being performed by the village director of Public Works. And I've asked the director of Public Works if he could use the whiteboard to illustrate for us what the depth and inclination issue is.
Okay. It is on.
No.
I think it's on.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Guru's right at that.
As we get into these designs, and it's unfortunate, and the construction, it's unfortunate that sometimes you have these situations arise. But what this boils down to is we've got certain areas along Club Circle, fewer on Lilac,
Where with the design, typically you want to see a ditch, and as you know, as we just talked about, when we do these projects, we're going to have the storm component, the water component, and the road component. From a storm sewer perspective, we either bury pipe or we ditch out the area. Now typically you want a ditch that's a gentle swale where it's easily mowable. And so you're looking at a 3-to-1 to 4-to-1 slope on these coming down from the front yard, and then you got the shoulder of the road, and then you're going up with your, this is exaggerated, but you got your 2% crown on the road right in here. That's ideally what you're going to see. Unfortunately, I think battery light. It won't matter. Battery light. What we're finding in some areas is that this is actually like this. It's very steep, and in some situations, it's worse than that, where it's actually extended. And if you can imagine this, comes over and it's very steep here, right up along the shoulder of the road, and then it goes into the 2% crown. And if you have this type of situation, every year what's going to happen is we're going to plow the roads, we plow off the shoulder of the road, this material is going to dump down in the ditch, and everything that we've done with trying to bury pipe or figure out where we should have these gentle swales, that's going to disappear. And so as we got into construction, we realized that we have these areas, and we didn't cut as far back on the ditches because along Club Circle and Lilac, you have an ungodly amount of vegetation and growth. And so we could clear cut everything and make this slope a lot more shallower, but you still have this steep slope right here, just to match up with the culverts that we have along and underneath the driveways. So we talked to our general contractor, UPI, about how much it would cost. And they came in, now their bid price was $52 per foot, regardless of whether it was 12-inch or 10-inch pipe. But because they had to remobilize to the site, the 12-inch went up to $66 a foot, and the 10-inch went up to $69 a foot. All told, we got a proposal from them for doing some pipe on Lilac. We're debating whether to do that, and then some on Club. There's about 470 feet on Club, and then about 220 feet on Lilac. We've ruled out Lilac. We're going to give it a go and not bury pipe because the slopes Some of them are steeper, but we're gonna see how it fares over the course of the winter season. And if we do need to bury pipe, that's something that our crews will probably hit next year. The reason why we looked at this is because, number one, we can't attack it right now. Our crews are knee-deep in leaves. We got our second leaf truck out, so we just don't have the staff time to do it this year. If this were to happen spring of next year, we might have been able to bury this pipe. But we want to get this done before the landscaping restoration starts. We looked at the price and we said, we don't like that. For the 470 feet, it would have been about $35,000, and I don't remember the exact amount that I quoted in the memo. So we talked to another contractor who's doing work for us, WSO Grading, and he gave us a price of roughly $16,500 and another $2,000 for stone, the bedding material, to bury the pipe. And then he'll use the fill that we have from water digs and water main breaks in the backyard. So we're not paying for him to truck in any other soil. We'll load him up, his quad axle, he'll dump it, and he'll put it over the top of the pipe. And then the landscape restoration is all part of the contract. If he does it, we back it out of the contract, or if he gets it done, and I talked with him this, about 4:30 today, he said that his plan is to get it done next week. Well, the subcontractor who's doing the landscape restoration, he probably won't be in that area when he gets it done. He could be on the north side of the club. This is actually on the south side of the club.
Could you draw where the buried pipe would go?
So what would happen is, in this steep pipe situation, you would carve out a little bit more right here. It's fairly to grade, and I'll go down a little bit so we can get about 6 inches of bedding material, and then you'd bury the pipe right in there, and then you'd fill this in so you have a gentle swale. And what the village did, we looked at this and said, it's perfect. His cost is to bury the pipe. We'll purchase the materials. So his cost is about $18,000. We buy the materials. We're getting it tax-free. And it's going to cost us about $3,100 to buy the materials. So total cost for the project, in addition to the $18,000, is about $21,500, roughly. So we're saving $13,000, $14,000 by going with this other contractor, and he's given it to us at about $35 a foot. If you add in the material costs, $3,100 over 470 feet, doing off the top of my head, you're probably adding $7, $8. So we're getting it for about $43 a foot, as opposed to $66 or $69 a foot. I think it's a really prudent idea to bury the pipe, because if you take a moment, you've got some time, drive up, you've got the south loop and you've got the north loop of Club. Drive along the south loop and you can't miss some of these steep areas. You come right off of Lake Drive, and before you get to Lilac and Mary Lane, you'll see these on the north side of the road. There's a couple on the south side as well.
What's the interval where the water actually goes into the system?
What do you mean by
In
that?
other words, are there grades
Yes.
from?
So then what we'll do is,
What is the spacing between the grades, basically?
the spacing is dependent on the distance between the driveways.
Yeah.
Okay? So we'll add additional grades where they need to be. In some locations, you don't need it, you just have to have an open pipe, because you might have, let's say you have a driveway approach right here with the culvert underneath. And the next one is down here. But what's happening is, in between, it's really steep, and then it starts to shallow out. Let's call it shallow on this side, and more steep on this side. Well, then we just have an open pipe situation. We bury the pipe through here, and then we let it free flow right on in. Okay? There's only, again, there's 5 inlets that we need to bury. His cost includes the price to bury those 5 inline drains. It's my recommendation that we go ahead and do this, because if you just took a look at it, you realize there's no way in God's green earth you want to be mowing that. It's virtually impossible to mow it, because I'm telling you, these slopes are 2-to-1 to 1-to-1. And what that means is, a 1-to-1 slope is for every 1 foot out, you're dropping a foot. So it's a 45-degree angle. A 2-to-1, you go 2 feet out, 1 foot down. typically you want a 3-1 or ideally a 4-1, but, you know, right-of-way widths are challenging.
And if we don't do it, we'll be out fixing it next year anyway.
Yep.
That's the bottom line.
I move we accept the proposal of WSO grading and excavating and around $18,703 for the installation of additional storm sewer pipe along Plum Circle and authorize the village manager to sign this vote on behalf of the village per Director of Public Works memorandum dated October 12th, 2018.
Second. Second by Mr. Ullman. Any discussion? Thank you for that good explanation, Brian.
No problem.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We move to item 4, the consideration of the special assessment. We are back to 7030, 7031 Belmont Lane. You probably read the memorandum by the village attorney explaining this. I think this is a precautionary legal step to make sure we're covered. I'll ask the village manager.
That is correct, and the reason that he wanted us to do this evening was that we could take action on the final resolution in November, so we can get it on the tax bills as a special assessment, should we see fit.
Mr. Costa.
I move that we adopt the preliminary resolution declaring the levy special assessment on the municipal police power pursuant to section 66.0703 Wisconsin statutes within the assessment district identified as 7030 and 7031 Belmont Lane.
I second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are at item 5. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, trustee Sumner moved to adjourn and trustee Fonseca second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.
I
Thank you.
tried to send you all the videos and pictures that Scott sent me of the riser pipe. Some of you may have